Welcome back, May 11th, looking for work. Excited to be here and share with you as many pro tips as I can pack into this hour-long session. We'll go for as long as 1 o'clock, as long as you guys have questions. So feel free to drop some questions in the chat window. I'm going to check out LinkedIn and just make sure we are supposed to be live, but make sure we are live. We are live. Love it when a plan comes together. So basically the way this works is I'll kind of hang out, take questions. If you have a question about the process of getting started in tech, breaking into tech, landing that first job, feel free to drop a comment. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube and Twitch. And so you can basically put a comment in any of those places. It will come directly to me, and then we'll be able to answer your questions. If throughout this process, or you're watching this on a video, you decide later on to shoot me a question, you can send me the question via email, mike@cccareers.org. See a couple comments trickling through, so I am live. Thank you, Stephanie, for confirming, as well as Laurel. Good to see you on the podcast. And yeah, I should say, ask me anything. This is not really a podcast, a post. This is more of a let's do this live. Let's answer some questions and get people help in real time. So if you have been maybe interviewing or you're searching for that first job, again, drop me a comment, even a question, thumbs up. Just let's make this as interactive and as fun as possible. I was on a great panel this morning, the North County Education Summit, and man, there were all these amazing opportunities for people to get training. Lots of other apprenticeship programs, which I was surprised to see. Last year, it didn't seem like there was as many apprenticeships. This year, I heard a lot of pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships, and so there's a lot of opportunities to get training. But what I'm more focused on during these afternoon sessions is how do we get that last mile and get folks from the training that they've gotten into their first entry-level role. And so our focus is really bring me your problem. We do this every Tuesday. We start at 12. We go for as long as 1 o'clock. And if we get questions until then, I'll keep answering. So the way you get your questions to me is drop them in the comment box, and then I'll read through them, take my best stab at trying to answer them. I've been helping folks transition into coding careers for a while. So I've seen lots of students do this the right way. Lots of students make mistakes that cause the process to just take much, much longer. So if you can find a way, if you can identify any of these tactics and techniques and the strategies that I share that are applicable to your job search, then please apply them and shorten that time, because I can tell you it is frustrating watching people just kind of not know what to do, and it's not an intuitive process. So in that case, I see lots of wasted effort, and it's frustrating to watch, let alone live that experience. So if you've gone to a coding boot camp, or if you've been self-teaching, or if you've gone through an apprenticeship program, or any of those other avenues to gain the skill, there really is a process that you should use to shorten that time frame. I talk a little bit about the way you should break down your weeks in other previous sessions. So check out the YouTube, subscribe, and like this, so that you can, again, be able to kind of go back and see some of the previous content, as well as gain the shared experience of other people. And here, this is what's working for other people. See if you can apply it to your job search. The process, like I said, it's not very intuitive, and it can definitely be done in a pretty efficient way. And a lot of the folks that I've helped can get jobs in a reasonably short period of time, like 4 to 6 weeks. This is typical. Doesn't take as long as a lot of people might think. And especially in this economy where there is a labor shortage right now, and folks are really looking for talented folks. And so it's a little bit more of a bar that you've got to get over in tech, but it's still very doable. So what questions do you have? Feel free, drop them in the comment box. I know it takes a few minutes for them to come through, so I'll try and be patient. As many of you know, patience is not my best virtue. Hey, Caleb, good to see you. I agree. I like doing the lives. The lives are a lot funner. Ooh, that's a good question. So Stephanie asks, what is the difference between quality assurance and quality control? I would say semantics, right? It's far less likely that you'll hear the term quality control in some software engineering circles as you'll hear QA. And it's interesting because my wife is a registered nurse, and the other day she said something about like QC, and I was like, QC, what's QC? She's like, quality control. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't use that here. We use QA. And so I think it's the same. You also see software engineer in quality or software engineer in quality assurance. And so at the end of the day, I would say all of those terms are really synonymous for the same thing, the same role. And some organizations may put more emphasis on, well, we want to make sure that we're like a gating mechanism. And others may think of the role as more of like a, hey, we want to just ensure that throughout the entire process, we're thinking about quality. And so some will actually add a little bit more significance to, we call it this because that's what we intend. But from a layperson standpoint, I think it would be perfectly fine for you to think of the two as the same in your brain, because there are not going to be significant differences between those two. What you want to make sure you're paying a little bit more attention to on job postings is it a manual QA or QC, or is it an automated role? And also, is there software engineering attached to it somewhere? Because those are very different tiers, right? So if we're talking about QA and we're talking about manual testing, that's kind of a brutal process, right? Because you're just constantly, as an end user, going through and like navigating around and trying to break things on physical devices, on different machines, different workstations with different configurations. And the QA automation is much more, can we create a robust set of automated tools and a testing suite that ensures we have adequate coverage and things are at a high quality and functioning without introducing regressions and errors in the code base as we continue to deploy more and more changes. So hopefully that answers your question, Stephanie. If you have questions, please drop them in the comment box, and I'll be happy to take a stab at answering them. So what books do I recommend for junior engineers? Okay. One of my favorite series of all time, especially if you're a web developer or practitioner, is the well-known series by my friend and your friend, Kyle Simpson. So Kyle Simpson has a series of books called You Don't Know JS. He has been a prolific author and teacher for many years and spoken at a lot of conferences. Great set of books. You can start with JavaScript Up and Running. That's the first book in that series. And then I believe Scope and Closures, which is just on my shoulder right here, Scope and Closures, is the second book in the series, but there's like 5 or 6 books, and there's like a new edition of the series coming out. They are very, very dense reads, though. This is not like light time reading that you're going to just like pick it up and rip through it. So you could buy just that first one, Up and Running with JavaScript, and that would be sufficient for you to just like grind on it for months on end. It goes very deep, but it's very good content. And the more frequently you read it, you might need to read it a few times for it to start really sinking in. It's like the owner's manual for beginning JavaScript, right? It's like the standard in terms of the book that I would say must have on your desk. The other one that's fairly common for junior developers, and I think it's good to give you a good perspective on JavaScript, is Douglas Crawford's JavaScript, The Good Parts. And he has some opinions about the better things about the JavaScript language and some areas that are maybe weaknesses or to stay clear of, steer away from. So those are, I think, some of the like very quick, easy suggestions that I make. I like Software Craftsmanship. That one is pretty good. It gives you a very good grounding on what we should be doing as people that are building software beyond just the mechanics of implementation, but how we should be thinking about creating solutions for businesses that we serve, right? There's another one that's written by, this one is really, really nice for, this is a coffee table type one, right? This is a really nice one for, because it gives you these great visualizations and breakdowns of code and examples. It's just beautifully illustrated for HTML and CSS. So if you're trying to learn the fundamentals, like awesome code examples in here, just like a phenomenal book. And so I've kept these for the classrooms, and every classroom I try and get these things in there, and just they're great. You just open up to any page, and even as a fairly seasoned software engineer, I'm always like blown away, like, oh yeah, that's right. That is a way that you can, adjacent sibling selector, right? All right. That's a good little reminder. So yeah, so for junior, there's this one, and there's an accompanying JavaScript one. The JavaScript one is cool, but I actually like the HTML and CSS book in this series, and is written by John Duckett. It's called HTML, CSS, Design and Build Websites. So if you're a junior, and I'm assuming web developer, then you could get that. There's another series that's really good, but it's probably not, it's not the first book I would suggest as a junior engineer. There's a series of books called 7 Languages in 7 Weeks. Great series. And even if you're not going to be able to pick up 7 languages in 7 weeks as an early career developer, but it does give you a chance to get one book that has 7 languages in it that you can kind of like read through and start seeing the nuances and the differences and the way that different languages approach solving different problems. So that book, that series, 7 languages in 7 weeks, there's a series and there's several of them. So you could find one where you've heard about maybe a few of the languages in there that are the most interesting, and basically you can get one book that has 7 languages that you can kind of dive a little deeper into. So those would be my favorite. That's like my top list for junior engineers. I know everybody's like, what about cracking the coding interview? It's okay, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's essential. These, I would say, much more essential. You should be reading through these. Cracking the coding interview is literally about practicing problems that are common in some CS type interviews, not necessarily always the most applicable. So if you have a question, please drop it in there. Hopefully, Caleb, that answers your question about the Goodreads, the things that I recommend. I see a question from Ken. Appreciate what I do. Thank you. We need more leaders like me, provide practical leadership for the benefit of the group. Can you talk about the role developers have regarding implementing security in the process and why it's typically seen as a challenge? Yeah, so security is tough because you have to not only understand the fundamentals, but you have to understand how things interact and work together. And a lot of that knowledge that you build up is like real practical hands-on knowledge that takes a while for you to amass. So as a new person, when someone says like, don't save your keys in GitHub, you're like, all right, cool. And then you accidentally commit your API key in your code in GitHub, and then it immediately flags it and says, hey, don't do that. Or a lot of them scan, and if they notice your API key in the GitHub, they will basically disable the API key for you, right? So I think it's one of those areas where, unfortunately, it has to sting a little bit, and you have to have that moment where your key gets rejected and you spend like 2 hours trying to figure out why you're like trying to use the API key and it's not working. And then you get another one issued and you commit your code and then immediately it's not working again, before someone's like, okay, I just spent 3 hours going in circles because I'm a knucklehead and I need to know this is important and this is serious. So I think that's one of the challenges as a new software developer. Until you get a bunch of data stolen, or someone breaks into the system and locks you out, or until your API keys don't work, it's not real. right? It's just not, the reality is just like people are just, they're just saying don't give admin permissions to the users and give them the lowest level permission needed, but it's not that important, right? And then you get burned one time and someone just runs rampant in your system, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna be a little bit more careful, right? And so I also think that in many cases, it's just not necessarily that they don't think it's important, but some of the vendors that might have made it challenging to figure out like what are the appropriate permissions and how do I do that, and barring the opportunity to like easily pick it up and understand it, people will default to the path of least resistance and to the easiest solution, which is let me just grab everybody's permission and just elevate them to admin or make them root, and that will solve these challenges, right? It's as common as people have npm issues and permission issues, and rather than them fixing the permission issues, they use sudo. Don't do that. If you're a new developer and npm is not working, do not just sudo npm. That's the time for you to pause, fix the permissions issues you're having, and then move forward. Because when you're creating these little like, hey, let's just quickly give elevated permissions to get something done, you are creating the worst kind of technical debt, the one that could cause a security issue that you will live to regret when the finger points back at you. Like, who left these keys here? It's not good. It's not good when it's you. So that's my take on it is when we talk about like, why is it a challenge and why it's twofold. I think the first part of it is they don't have enough lived experience and know just how serious the consequences are. And then the second part of it is I think we need to be more developer friendly, and we need to make it easier for folks to do things like to ensure sites have SSL. I mean, we've got this great Let's Encrypt tool now. There's not nearly as many excuses for not having SSL, but it is still mind-blowing how challenging it is in some ecosystems to like, how do I set environment variables and how do I very easily safely pull in environment variables like keys and secrets? And more frameworks and libraries need to make that super simple, super trivial. We've come a long way by having something like Let's Encrypt, where it's like, it's free. It's practically malpractice to not be using SSL, but it's still a little work in some cases to get that set up, right? And so that's the piece. I think that's the other half of it. Part of it is just like it's not real. The other part of it is it's tough. And I think that begins to create an atmosphere of like being a little lazy. But I think that's going to change as people start seeing like all of the ransomware and these attacks that we're having. And I think there's going to be a much more critical focus on security moving forward, as there should be. Because if everybody does it, it greatly reduces the surface area for these knuckleheads that are out there causing chaos. And we need to get rid of cryptocurrency. That's a whole other thing, right? If we just kill off cryptocurrency because it's a terrible idea, then I think we're going to be fine. I think we're going to, well, not fine, but I think we're going to greatly reduce the amount of like bad actors we have out there. The cryptocurrency is just, we're just cruising for a bruising. So many ways that that's going to go south. I mean, don't even get me started. So I love blockchain and I love the technology, but let's apply blockchain to things that make a little bit more sense first, like electronic medical records, voting systems. Let's not do currency as the first thing. And especially if we just the wild, wild west and people are going to use it to bribe people to pay off these ransoms. So till the ransomware goes away, I don't think we can safely have cryptocurrency. We're not ready for it. That's why we can't have nice stuff. We are not ready for it. What else? What other questions do folks have? Thanks, Caleb. Makes me feel super smart. I don't remember what the question was, but yeah, like that. I'll take that. Okay, good one. Yes, not good to practice with money. Not just like everyone's money, right? The entire economy. Let's let Facebook control currency. How about no? How about no? Not a good idea. Sorry, Facebook, but I'm voting no. What are my thoughts on Ethereum development? So I don't have a thing against the blockchain itself, and so figuring out as a developer how you can learn more traits of blockchain and how to go about using it as a mechanism for safe and efficient transactions and transaction history. I just think we should decouple it and decouple the idea of cryptocurrency and like NFTs or whatever that nonsense is people trying to do, and then really think about what are some practical solutions we can use this for, right? And one is like, it's about time we get all these medical records a little bit more standardized and be able to really help a lot of people by making it secure and easy for you to have this information that you can have it be more portable. Same thing with like credentials, having stackable credentials so that us as human beings, when we move from employer to employer, we can take some of the training records that we've had and the experience that we've had and be able to make those a little bit more portable and able to be validated. I can't imagine, like, if I had to go back and find my high school transcript right now, even college transcripts, like I haven't had to show anybody my college transcript for years, but I can imagine like the 2 or 3 days of searching it would take for us to figure out, do I have a copy of my transcript at home? Could I go back to the registrar and get a copy of the transcripts? And then for like the multiple schools I went to, it's just a disaster. So learning blockchain, I think, is very valuable for developers because I do believe that it's part of the future of the way we're going to solve some problems with software. The other one I'm like pretty bullish on is quantum computing. I think that's also going to be a really big, robust area for people to break out into. Still super early for both, right? I think there's still lots and lots of room for us to explore what those career paths are going to look like, what kind of jobs are going to evolve, what kind of innovative startups are going to be in that space. But good places if you're thinking about, hey, I want to be in a space where there's a fewer number of candidates that you're competing for jobs with, and the jobs are going to be with folks that are more on like the R&D side, and they really need solutions. I think it's a good skill set to have. Right? It's not the same as like when you're coding in a industry or in a vertical that's a little bit more focused on things that are kind of up and down, like tourism, right? A lot more volatile than in like fintech, a lot more volatile than areas where there's like, hey, we're not going to stop eating anytime soon. So agricultural technology, man, all over that. Biotech, life sciences, like those are really good spaces. And I think there's a lot of blockchain that could be applied in that. All right, what other questions do you have? I know it takes just a few minutes for me to stop talking and then for folks to see there's a good gap for questions. So feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll just take them one at a time. As you throw them in the comments, I'll see them, and then I'll be able to jump right on them. I'll also check my email. Occasionally someone will come through while we're chatting in email, but for the most part, we're doing it live, right? Let's do it live. Yeah, no emails. So that's good. As the clock ticks down, once we start having these long pauses, then I start thinking about lunch. We're having leftovers today, so yeah, Mother's Day was pretty good, so we got some good leftovers. What else? Any other questions? If we don't have any more questions, we're going to end this beast early. I feel like every time I say that, I feel like it's like a threatening tone. That's not my intent, but I do need questions to make this thing work. So I'm glad we had a few people jumping on that we've seen before, and so that tells me that this is becoming a consistent habit for folks. And I'm hoping some of the other things I talk about, like working on passion projects, following up with employers, and doing those real like reach out and connect with human beings inside organizations are also things that are becoming like habit forming for the people that listen to this, either post or are trying to make a live session. Those are really going to be the keys to accelerating and getting past this. I know this most painful part of getting that first job. But once you get the first job, I guarantee you, once you get the first job, just be a decent human being, be a good employee, right? Keep your head down and get your work done. You will have a job for the rest of your life. Like, everybody will want to hire you. It's just kind of proving at the very beginning that you are going to come in and you're going to work hard and you're going to hustle and you're going to help make an impact. And early on, you might need a little time to develop and, you know, and get your sea legs, but you're eventually you're gonna get there. That's what you need to convince folks of. And you need to have enough skill that they can see that from where you are today to where they need you to be, like, you can get there. And once you can convince someone, hey, this is where I need to be, you need to be here, I can get there, then the process is gonna be way, way easier. All right. If I don't get another question in the next like 10 seconds, I'm gonna jump off and then we'll redo this next week. We'll do it every Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. I have no idea if anybody listening to me has any clue what that reference is. Well, let's just say we're old. Those of us that know that. So, all right, I'm gonna sign off for this week. And we'll check back in next week. If you have questions in the meantime, feel free, shoot me an email, mike@cccareers.org. And if you're interested in apprenticeships, right at the wire. See, that's how it happens. Caleb asks, what do I think is the most in-demand field for junior engineers to get into? Okay, so it's interesting that you asked that, because I actually had a chart up earlier today that I used to demonstrate how many job openings there are in the United States. On the front end, and this was a little while ago, but it's fairly recent stats. So front end, there was like 117,000 jobs. Back end, there's 58,000. And then for full stack, there's 64,000. So just in the web development space, you're looking at a few 100,000 jobs right there. Right, so that's wide open. There's a lot of opportunities. Divide that by 50 states, you're still looking at like a couple thousand open jobs in every state that are like easy for people to qualify for on the entry level side. The ones that are like massive in terms of like, if you compare that, so 117,000 front end roles, which is probably the easier of the like front end versus full stack versus back end. Front end is usually like the entry point for a lot of folks. Compare that to somebody that has a little bit more experience and might move into like DevOps. In the DevOps space, there's 489,000, 500,000 opening jobs in the US right now in DevOps. And so if you're a junior engineer and you're thinking, hey, where can I go where there's a lot more demand than just like even software engineering, web development, front end, back end? DevOps, right? It's an order of magnitude larger in terms of the 5x the number of opportunities available right now in the ecosystem. So when people say, well, how do you do that? Well, you do probably want to still start with just software engineering. You want to start with web development, really understand how applications are working together, get more into the back end when you understand how back end application development is working, and then how you deploy applications and how you get them communicating with one another, how they do service discovery and figure out where other apps are at, back ends and API endpoints. How do you load balance applications? And then you start kind of diving into that DevOps, right? How do we get our applications distributed and maintain them? Then you've got product management. So product management side, again, front-end engineer, 117,000. Product folks, 397, almost 400,000 jobs open in the US, right? So like, there's a lot of folks in product. Product is a good place for engineers to go, because if you come into product with an engineering background, you're going to be phenomenal. So you'll do less hands on the keyboard coding, but you will understand more about systems design and more about how you can actually get your product launched faster, because it's going to be way easier for you to cut through Sometimes product folks don't have an engineering background, so they don't know when something is really hard to do and will take a long time, and when something is easier to do. And they have to then rely on communicating to an engineering team and getting an opinion from them on the complexity and how much time something takes. When you're an engineer, if you want to move into the product space, you bring a pretty decent skill set to the table. The last one I'll give you is data engineering. So data engineering, 117,000 jobs in front-end software engineering. Data engineering, 517,000 jobs. So data engineering, good direction to get into, right? Data engineering is not the same as data science. They're two different things. Data engineering is more about how you take responsibility for the data itself. How do we extract data? How do we transform and load it into systems that can then be used by folks that want to analyze the data and make decisions based on it, use it for modeling, etc. So the data engineer is like the workhorse behind the data science team, right? And so data engineering, a lot more roles even than data scientists. Data scientist takes a higher level of proficiency, but that's usually the direction people will head in. They'll start data engineering, move into data science. A lot of folks are trying to skip, and there's like, I'm going to take a data science bootcamp. Not a good idea, because there just aren't as many roles for entry-level data scientists as there are data engineers. So data engineering, that is definitely something that my school, our program, is interested in getting into. So hopefully that's kind of a good, a good little comparison. Obviously, the jobs aren't evenly distributed. So if we look at just California, 13,000 jobs in front end right now are open. In DevOps, it's like 60,000. Product, it's a little over that. It's a little higher than 60. And then data engineering is close to 70. So 70,000 jobs available in California alone. There's a lot of opportunity. So when people say, I can't find a job, it's all right. It's probably you. It's probably not the fact that the jobs don't exist. It's your process. You've got to get better at the job of finding a job. You got to get better at selling yourself and your skill set, because the opportunities are definitely out there. They're not easy to find. So by no means am I saying that this is like, hey, you're a knucklehead because this is intuitive. You should just be able to figure it out. That's not the case. That's why I'm doing this, right? That's why I'm talking to you right now through the intertubes, to the interweb. But it does make sense if you zoom out to the 30,000-foot view and think about, like, okay, all these openings, there is some percentage of them that they will take entry-level folks and train them into their roles. And so I don't know what that percentage is. I don't know if it's 10%, 20%, 50%, but whatever that number is, there's plenty of margin in there for you. It's just that simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. All right. Any other questions before we bounce? Happy to hang and answer more. I like doing this. I just happen to have these stats up because I gave a presentation this morning, so it was it's pretty handy to just have the deck here. Oh yeah, I just said that. It's a good question though. All right, hearing none, we are going to end, and we'll do this again next week. Any questions in the meantime, shoot me an email, mike@cccareers.org. Have a great rest of the day.